The rain came down hard that evening in Seoul. Jiwoo ran through the wet streets with her sketchbook held tight against her chest. Her old jacket was already soaked through and her shoes made wet sounds on the pavement. She pushed open the door to the small cafe on the corner and felt relief wash over her as the warm air hit her face. The cafe was almost empty. Only one customer sat by the window, staring out at the rain. Jiwoo shook the water from her hair and walked toward her usual spot in the back corner. That was when she bumped into the stranger's table. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," Jiwoo said quickly. She grabbed the cup before it could fall over completely. A few drops of tea spilled onto the table. The stranger looked up at her. Jiwoo's breath caught for just a moment. He was not human. His skin had a soft silver glow to it like moonlight on water. His eyes were the strangest part. They seemed to shift colors, moving between purple and gold. But what struck her most was the look on his face. He looked so tired, so incredibly sad. "It is fine," he said. His voice was gentle and quiet. "No harm done." Jiwoo grabbed some napkins from the nearby counter and wiped up the small spill. "I really am sorry. I was not watching where I was going. Please do not worry." The stranger managed a small smile. "The rain makes everyone rush." Jiwoo nodded and moved to her corner table. She set down her sketchbook and ordered a hot coffee from Mrs. Bora, the elderly woman who owned the cafe. As she waited, she could not help but glance at the stranger. He had gone back to staring at the rain, but there was something about him that made her chest feel tight. He looked like someone who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. When Mrs. Bora brought her coffee and a small pastry, Jiwoo made a decision. She took the pastry and walked back to the stranger's table. "Excuse me," she said. He looked up again, surprised. "I bought too much food. Would you like this?" The stranger stared at the pastry like it was the most precious thing he had ever seen. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he looked up at her with those shifting eyes and she saw something break in his expression. "Thank you," he whispered. "That is very kind. May I sit?" Jiwoo asked, pointing to the empty chair. He nodded slowly. Jiwoo sat down and took a sip of her coffee. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, just listening to the rain hit the windows. "I am Jiwoo," she said finally. "Taemin," he replied. "Just Taemin. Are you visiting Earth for work?" Jiwoo asked. "Something like that," Taemin said. He picked up the pastry carefully, almost reverently. "I travel quite a lot. For responsibilities." "That sounds lonely," Jiwoo said without thinking. Then she felt embarrassed. "Sorry, I should not assume." "No," Taemin said quietly. "You are right. It is very lonely." There was something in the way he said it that made Jiwoo's heart ache. She opened her sketchbook to change the subject. "I am an art student. I come here to draw and think." Taemin leaned forward slightly to look at her drawings. His eyes widened. "These are beautiful. So full of life." Jiwoo felt her cheeks warm. "They are just simple things. A street vendor selling fruit. An old couple walking together. Children playing in the park. Nothing special." "Nothing special?" Taemin looked at her with an intensity that made her nervous. "These are the most special things in the universe." Jiwoo laughed, confused. "They are just normal everyday moments." "Exactly," Taemin said. He touched the edge of the sketchbook gently, careful not to smudge anything. "You see beauty in the ordinary, in the individual lives of people just living their days. That is a rare gift." They talked for over an hour. Taemin asked her about her art, her studies, her life. He seemed fascinated by the smallest details. When she mentioned how she loved watching the elderly couples in the park, he asked her why. When she talked about the street vendor who always gave her extra fruit, he wanted to know everything about their conversations. "You ask a lot of questions," Jiwoo said with a smile. "Are you a researcher or something?" "In a way," Taemin said. "I have spent a very long time in my position, but I realize I have forgotten how to see the world the way you do. Every single person matters to you. Every small moment has meaning." "Of course," Jiwoo said. "Is it not that way where you come from?" Taemin's expression became distant. "No. Where I come from, people think in terms of billions. Individual lives get lost in the numbers. I had forgotten what it felt like to see one person and know they matter." "That sounds terrible," Jiwoo said honestly. "Every person matters. Every life is a whole universe of experiences and feelings and dreams." Taemin closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were brighter somehow. "Thank you for reminding me of that." The rain began to slow down. Jiwoo realized she had been talking to this stranger for much longer than she planned, but she did not feel uncomfortable. Instead, she felt like she had made a real connection with someone who needed it. "Do you come to Earth often?" she asked. "Not as often as I should," Taemin said, "but I think I would like to come back more." "You should come back to this cafe," Jiwoo said. "Mrs. Bora makes the best tea in the city, and I am usually here 3 or 4 times a week." "I would like that very much," Taemin said. He stood up slowly, as if his body was tired from more than just the day. "Thank you, Jiwoo, for the pastry, for the conversation, for treating me like a person." Jiwoo stood too. "Of course. Everyone deserves kindness." Taemin pulled out a small device from his pocket. It looked like no phone Jiwoo had ever seen, but she assumed it was alien technology. "May I have your contact information, so I can let you know when I am back in the area?" They exchanged information. As Taemin walked toward the door, Mrs. Bora looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes went very wide and her hand froze in the middle of wiping down a cup. She stared at Taemin like she had seen a ghost, but Taemin just nodded politely to her and walked out into the light rain. Jiwoo sat back down at her table, feeling strange. The conversation had affected her in ways she could not explain. There was something about Taemin that felt important, but she could not figure out what it was. Mrs. Bora came over to her table. The old woman was still pale. "Are you okay, Mrs. Bora?" Jiwoo asked. The cafe owner opened her mouth, then closed it. She shook her head slightly. "Just surprised to see certain people in my cafe," she said carefully. "Be careful, Jiwoo. Some friendships are more complicated than they seem." Before Jiwoo could ask what she meant, Mrs. Bora walked away. Jiwoo looked down at her sketchbook. Without really thinking about it, she started drawing. Her hand moved across the page, creating the image of a figure sitting by a window looking out at the rain. The figure had silver skin and sad eyes that seemed to carry the weight of worlds. Outside, the rain stopped completely. The evening sun broke through the clouds, painting everything in gold light. Jiwoo did not know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. She had just offered kindness to the most powerful being in half the galaxy. And that simple act of sharing a pastry with a lonely stranger would shake the foundations of the entire known universe. 3 days later, Jiwoo sat in the cafe working on a new sketch when the door opened. She looked up and felt her face break into a smile. Taemin stood in the doorway looking uncertain. "You came back," Jiwoo said, waving him over. "I said I would," Taemin replied. He sat down across from her, and some of the tension left his shoulders. "I hope I am not disturbing your work." "Not at all. I am just sketching ideas." "Nothing serious yet." Jiwoo closed her sketchbook. "How was your work?" Taemin's expression became complicated. Difficult. There were many decisions to make. Many people depending on those decisions. He rubbed his temples. "Sometimes I feel like I have been making decisions forever." "That does sound hard," Jiwoo said. She ordered tea for both of them. "What kind of work do you do exactly?" "I manage things," Taemin said carefully. "Very large operations, across many locations." "Like a business executive?" "Something like that." Taemin looked relieved when the tea arrived, giving him something to focus on besides her questions. Over the next few weeks, Taemin came to the cafe regularly. Sometimes twice a week, sometimes more. Each time he and Jiwoo would talk for hours. She told him about her struggles as an artist, about her family, about her dreams of having her work in a real gallery someday. He listened to every word like it was the most important thing he had ever heard. Taemin rarely talked about his own work, but he loved hearing about human culture. Jiwoo brought him books of poetry. She showed him films on her tablet. She explained human history and philosophy. He was especially fascinated by how humans thought about individual rights and dignity. "Even your poorest citizens have basic protections," he said one day, reading through a book she had brought him. "You believe every single person deserves respect, regardless of their position or power." "Of course," Jiwoo said. "Is that not normal everywhere?" Taemin laughed, but it was a sad sound. "No, in most places power decides worth. The strong rule. The weak serve. That is how it has always been." "That is horrible," Jiwoo said firmly. "Every person has value. Every life matters. Power should protect people, not put them in order of importance." Taemin stared at her for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "Yes, does that sound strange to you?" "No," Taemin said softly. It sounds like the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. And it makes me ashamed that I had to come all this way to be reminded of it. Jiwoo felt confused by his words, but she did not push. Instead, she showed him her new sketches. She had started a series about connection. Pictures of people from different backgrounds sharing moments together. A human and an alien sitting together on a bus. A parent and child from different species. Beings who looked nothing alike working side by side. These are wonderful, Taemin said. You see the possibility of unity everywhere. I see what should be normal, Jiwoo corrected. We are all just people trying to live our lives. Why should our differences matter more than what we share? What Jiwoo did not know was that Taemin's visits to Earth were causing concern across half the galaxy. His advisors were worried. His military commanders were confused. The ruler of the Dalvian Empire never took personal trips. He never disappeared for hours at a time. He never ignored urgent messages to sit in a cafe drinking tea. And he had definitely never looked this peaceful. In his private thoughts, Taemin knew he was being foolish. Every hour he spent on Earth was an hour his enemies could use against him. Every moment of peace was a risk to the stability of his empire. But he could not stop himself from coming back. For 300 years he had been surrounded by people who bowed and feared and schemed. Jiwoo just talked to him like he was a regular person. She argued with him about art. She laughed at his jokes. She called him out when he said something she disagreed with. She saw him as Taemin, just Taemin, not the Imperator, not the Emperor of countless worlds, just a person who liked tea and conversations about poetry. One afternoon, Jiwoo noticed something strange. She mentioned to Taemin that she had received a letter saying her student debt had been forgiven, an administrative error, the letter said. That is wonderful news, Taemin said, not meeting her eyes. It is weird, though, Jiwoo continued. And yesterday, I was automatically upgraded to first class on the train. The conductor said it was a computer glitch. And then today, a famous gallery owner contacted me out of nowhere asking to see my work. Taemin shifted in his seat. You are talented. Perhaps word of your art is spreading. Taemin, these things are too much of a coincidence. Jiwoo looked at him carefully. Do you know anything about this? Why would I know about your local administrative matters? Taemin asked, but his voice was tight. Jiwoo decided to let it go, but she was starting to realize that Taemin was not just a business executive. There was something more to him. A week later, Jiwoo came to the cafe looking worried. Taemin noticed immediately. What is wrong? He asked. My younger brother Junho. He is sick. Jiwoo's voice shook. The doctors say he has a rare condition. Human medicine cannot cure it. He might only have a few months left. Taemin's face went very still. His eyes stopped shifting colors and locked into a deep dark gold. How old is he? 16, Jiwoo said, wiping her eyes. He is just a kid. He has not even lived yet. It is not fair. No, Taemin said quietly. It is not fair at all. They sat in silence for a while. Taemin did not offer empty comfort. He just sat with her in her pain, and somehow that helped. That night, after Jiwoo went home, Taemin made a call on his communication device. He spoke in his own language, his voice hard and commanding. It was a voice that had ordered fleets and decided the fate of planets. Within an hour, a medical team was dispatched from the Imperial Science Division. They were given one mission: save the human boy named Junho. 3 days later, Jiwoo burst into the cafe, tears streaming down her face. But this time they were tears of joy. He is getting better, she told Taemin, grabbing his hands. A team of doctors came. They said they were testing a new treatment. They gave Junho medicine, and he is already improving. The doctors say he will make a full recovery. That is wonderful news, Taemin said. He held her hands gently, careful not to show how much her touch affected him. For 300 years, no one had grabbed his hands in pure, honest joy. I do not understand it, though, Jiwoo said, sitting down. These doctors had equipment I have never seen before. Technology way beyond what we have. And when I asked them about their program, everything seemed vague. Taemin said nothing. He just squeezed her hands once before letting go. Taemin, Jiwoo said carefully. Who are you really? I am your friend, he said. Is that not enough? Jiwoo wanted to argue, but she saw something in his eyes. A plea. A desperate need for her to just let him be her friend without questioning further. So she nodded. Okay, you are my friend. And I am grateful for you, whoever you are. Relief flooded Taemin's face. They went back to their usual conversations, but something had shifted. Jiwoo was starting to understand that Taemin was someone important, someone powerful, but she did not know how important, how powerful. She had no idea that she was having tea with someone who controlled the lives of trillions, someone who could destroy planets with a word, someone who had lived longer than most civilizations. All she knew was that Taemin was kind. He was lonely. He was sad. And he needed a friend, so she was his friend. And for Taemin, that simple friendship was more valuable than all the power in his empire. Yunho's recovery was complete within 2 weeks. The mysterious doctors left as quickly as they had come, refusing any payment and leaving no contact information. Jiwoo tried to research the clinical trial they had mentioned, but she found nothing. No records. No papers. No program by that name existed anywhere in the galactic medical database. She sat in the cafe one afternoon, her tablet in front of her, searching through page after page of results. Nothing made sense. The technology those doctors had used was far beyond anything available to the public. Even the galactic community's most advanced hospitals did not have equipment like that. Mrs. Bora brought her coffee and looked at her screen. The old woman's expression became worried. "Jiwoo," she said quietly. "Sometimes it is better not to look for certain answers." "What do you mean?" Jiwoo asked. Mrs. Bora glanced toward the door, then back at Jiwoo. "I used to work in the Galactic Community Diplomatic Corps. I retired 20 years ago, but I remember things. I remember protocols. I remember what certain kinds of security look like." "I do not understand," Jiwoo said. "That man you have been meeting. Taemin." Mrs. Bora's voice was very soft now. "Do you know who he is?" "He said he manages large operations. I think he is some kind of executive or diplomat." Mrs. Bora shook her head slowly. "He is much more than that, child. I cannot tell you exactly who he is. That would put both of us in danger. But I can tell you this. You are sitting across from someone who could change the fate of entire worlds with a single decision." Jiwoo felt her stomach drop. "You are scaring me." "I am trying to protect you," Mrs. Bora said. "That man likes you. I can see it in how he looks at you. But his life is not simple. Being close to him means being close to danger." "He is my friend," Jiwoo said firmly. "He is kind and lonely and needs someone to talk to." "I know," Mrs. Bora said sadly. "And that is exactly why you should be careful." After Mrs. Bora walked away, Jiwoo sat for a long time thinking. She noticed other strange things over the past few weeks. The cafe had been visited by health inspectors 3 times, all of whom found everything perfect and left generous improvement grants. The street outside was suddenly repaved and had new lighting installed. Security cameras appeared on every corner, but they were more advanced than the standard city models. And whenever Taemin visited Earth, the news would mention increased activity at the orbital stations, ships coming and going at odd hours, diplomatic channels buzzing with activity. Jiwoo started paying attention to the news more carefully. She noticed reports about the Dalvian Empire. It was the largest and most powerful empire in known space. It controlled thousands of worlds and trillions of beings. Its ruler was called the Imperator, a being who had ruled for over 300 years. But there were never any pictures of the Imperator. No public appearances. Just reports of decisions being made, fleets being moved, policies being changed. The Imperator was more legend than reality to most people. When Taemin came to the cafe that evening, Jiwoo watched him carefully. He ordered his usual tea and sat down with a tired sigh. He looked drained, like he had been awake for days. "Rough week?" Jiwoo asked. "You have no idea," Taemin said. He rubbed his face. "There was a conflict between 2 of my territories. Both sides wanted different things. I had to find a solution that would satisfy everyone while not weakening the overall structure." "Your territories?" Jiwoo asked carefully. Taemin froze. He looked up at her, and she saw fear in his eyes. "I meant the territories my organization manages." "Taemin," Jiwoo said. "I need you to be honest with me. Who are you really?" "I am your friend," he said. "That is not an answer. Are you a diplomat? A military leader? A politician?" All of those things, Taemin said. And none of them. It is complicated. Then explain it to me, Jiwoo said. I thought we were friends. Friends are honest with each other. Taemin looked at her for a long moment. She could see him struggling with something inside. Finally, he spoke. I cannot tell you exactly who I am. If I do, everything changes. You will not look at me the same way. You will not talk to me the same way. And I will lose the one thing that makes my life bearable. What thing? Jiwoo asked. Being treated like a person, Taemin said simply. Do you know how long it has been since someone argued with me? Since someone told me I was wrong about something? Since someone shared their food with me because they thought I looked sad? But keeping secrets is not friendship either, Jiwoo said. How can I really know you if you will not be honest with me? Taemin stood up abruptly. His eyes were shifting rapidly between colors, a sign of strong emotion. I should not have come here. I should not have let this continue. Every moment I spend with you puts you at risk. At risk from what? Jiwoo stood up too. Taemin, you are not making sense. I have to go, Taemin said. He reached out like he wanted to touch her hand, then pulled back. I am sorry, Jiwoo, for everything. He turned and walked out of the cafe. Jiwoo stood there shocked. She started to follow him, but Mrs. Bora caught her arm. Let him go, the old woman said. This is for the best. No, Jiwoo said. He is my friend. He is hurting. I should go after him. Child, if he wanted you to follow, he would have stayed, Mrs. Bora said gently. Some people carry burdens too heavy to share. Jiwoo sat back down slowly. She felt like crying but was too confused to even do that. What had just happened? Why had Taemin run away? What was he so afraid of? That night she could not sleep. She kept thinking about everything Taemin had said, about being treated like a person, about arguments and shared food, about risks and burdens. The next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, Taemin did not come to the cafe. A week passed, then 2 weeks. Jiwoo went to the cafe every day hoping to see him, but he never appeared. She threw herself into her art. The gallery owner who had contacted her was interested in her connection series. Jiwoo worked on new pieces, but her heart was not in it. Every drawing seemed to remind her of Taemin. The way he looked at ordinary moments like they were miracles. The way he listened like every word mattered. She missed him. And she was angry at him. How could he just leave like that? How could he decide for both of them that their friendship was too dangerous? Mrs. Bora watched her with sad eyes but said nothing. 2 months passed. Jiwoo was starting to accept that Taemin was gone from her life. Maybe it was better this way. Maybe he had been right that some friendships were too complicated. Then one morning she woke up to her tablet buzzing with news alerts. She opened it and felt her whole world shift. The headline read, Imperator of Dalvine Empire to make historic visit to Earth. There was no picture of the Imperator, but the article said this was the first time in over 100 years that the ruler of the Dalvine Empire had made a public appearance. Earth's government was in chaos trying to prepare. This was the most important diplomatic event in human history. Jiwoo read the article 3 times. Something about it bothered her. The timing. The fact that Taemin had disappeared exactly when the planning for this visit would have begun. She looked up everything she could find about the Dalvine Empire, about the Imperator, about the power structure and the history. The more she read, the more a horrible suspicion grew in her mind. It could not be. It was impossible. Taemin was just a diplomat or an executive. He was not the ruler of half the galaxy. He could not be. But as she read about the Imperator's reputation for making decisions that affected trillions, for managing conflicts between territories, for carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders, she felt pieces clicking into place. When she saw the announcement that the Imperator's ship would arrive the next day, Jiwoo made a decision. She would watch the landing. She would see this mysterious ruler, and she would prove to herself that it was not Taemin, because if it was Taemin, then everything she thought she knew about her friend was a lie, Or maybe, she thought, everything she knew was the only truth and the Imperator was the lie. The ship appeared in Earth's sky just after dawn. It was massive, larger than anything humanity had ever built. The news coverage was on every screen, every channel. Ji-woo stood in the crowded plaza with thousands of other people, all watching the giant displays showing the landing. Earth's entire leadership stood on the platform. The president, the council members, military leaders, diplomats from a dozen different species. Everyone who mattered was there. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. No one knew why the Imperator had chosen to visit Earth. Was it an honor? A warning? A prelude to something terrible? The ship's doors opened. A walkway extended down to the platform. Guards in silver armor marched out first, taking positions on both sides. Then more officials appeared, advisors and attendants all dressed in elaborate robes. Finally, a figure appeared at the top of the walkway. Ji-woo's tablet fell from her hands. She heard it hit the ground but could not move to pick it up. All she could do was stare at the screen. It was Taemin. He wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid gold and silver. A crown that looked like captured starlight sat on his head. His silver skin seemed brighter somehow, more radiant. He moved with absolute authority, each step measured and perfect. Hundreds of guards surrounded him. Thousands of ships filled the sky above. This was not the tired man who drank tea in a small cafe. This was power made flesh. This was the being who controlled the fate of trillions, but it was still Taemin. She could see it in the way he moved, in the shape of his face, in those eyes that shifted between violet and gold. The president of Earth stepped forward, bowing deeply. Taemin acknowledged the bow with a small nod. Then he began to speak. His voice was amplified across every screen, every speaker on the planet. "People of Earth," he said, "I come before you today to make an announcement that will change the structure of galactic governance. For 300 years I have ruled the Dalvine Empire with absolute authority. I have made decisions that affected the lives of countless beings. I have held power that few can imagine." Ji-woo listened, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. "But recently," Taemin continued, "I was reminded of something I had forgotten. Something that your species understands better than any other in the known galaxy. Every being, regardless of their power or position, is first and foremost a person. Every individual life has value. Every voice deserves to be heard," the crowd around Ji-woo murmured. This was not what anyone had expected. "Therefore," Taemin said, "I am announcing the new accord. A complete restructuring of how the Dalvine Empire operates. Power will be shared with a council of representatives from every world. Individual planets will have autonomy over their own affairs. And I will step back from absolute rule to become a leader who serves rather than commands." The plaza erupted in shocked conversation. On the screens, Earth's leaders looked stunned. This was unprecedented. Empires did not just give up power. Emperors did not step down. But Taemin was not finished. He looked directly into the camera and Ji-woo felt like he was looking straight at her. "I learned this from someone very special," Taemin said. "A human who showed me that kindness is stronger than power. That seeing the individual is more important than controlling the masses. That true strength comes from connection, not dominion." Ji-woo felt tears running down her face. "Therefore," Taemin said, "I request a private meeting. Not with world leaders or diplomats. I request a meeting with Ji-woo of Seoul, an artist who taught me how to see beauty again." The crowd went silent. Then everyone started talking at once. The cameras swung around looking for someone named Ji-woo in the crowd. People near her started pointing and staring. Ji-woo stood frozen. This could not be happening. This had to be a dream. Within minutes, security personnel were pushing through the crowd toward her. They were polite but firm, creating a path. Ji-woo let them guide her forward, too shocked to resist. She was brought to a vehicle that took her to the landing platform. Earth's president met her there, looking both confused and slightly annoyed that his important diplomatic event had been hijacked. "The Imperator has requested to meet with you alone," the president said stiffly. "Do you know why?" "We are friends," Ji-woo said, and her voice sounded strange in her own ears. "At least I thought we were." "The Imperator does not have friends," one of the advisors muttered, but Ji-woo barely heard him. She was being led toward a private room in the government building. The doors opened and she saw Taemin standing there. He had removed his crown and the most elaborate parts of his robes. He looked more like the person she knew, but not quite. The weight of his power was visible in every line of his body. The doors closed behind her. They were alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Hi," Taemin said finally, and he sounded nervous. "You are the Imperator," Jiwoo said. Her voice shook. "Yes." "You rule half the galaxy." "Yes." "You have ruled for 300 years." "Yes." Jiwoo felt her knees go weak. She sat down in one of the chairs. "Why did you not tell me?" Taemin moved closer but kept his distance like he was afraid she might run. "Because I wanted to be just Taemin. Not the Imperator, not the Emperor. Just a person having tea with a friend." "But it was a lie," Jiwoo said. "No," Taemin said firmly. "That was the only truth. When I sat across from you in that cafe, I was more myself than I have been in centuries. Everything else is the lie. The crown, the title, the power. That is what I have to wear to do my duty. But Taemin, the person who likes human poetry and watches the rain, that is who I really am." "You should have trusted me," Jiwoo said. "You should have told me." "I know," Taemin said. His voice broke. "I was afraid. Afraid that you would treat me differently. Afraid that you would be scared of me. Afraid that I would lose the only real connection I have had in 300 years. So instead you just left?" Jiwoo stood up, anger replacing her shock. "You disappeared without explaining anything. You made that decision for both of us." "I was trying to protect you," Taemin said. "I did not ask to be protected," Jiwoo shot back. "I asked to be your friend. Friends trust each other. Friends are honest with each other." "You are right," Taemin said quietly. "I handled this badly. I was a coward. The most powerful being in the galaxy, and you were too scared to have an honest conversation," Jiwoo said. But some of her anger was fading. She could see how much pain he was in. "Power does not make courage easier," Taemin said. "It makes it harder. When you have so much power, vulnerability becomes terrifying. Because if you are wrong, if you trust the wrong person, entire worlds can suffer." Jiwoo sat back down. She was exhausted. "Why did you announce all of this now? The new accord. Why change everything?" "Because of you," Taemin said simply. "You showed me that I have been doing everything wrong. I have been thinking in terms of billions, of empires, of power structures. But I forgot about individuals. I forgot that every single person under my rule is like you. Someone with dreams and fears and people they love. Someone who deserves dignity and choice." "That should have been obvious," Jiwoo said. "It should have been," Taemin agreed. "But when you rule for so long, you forget. You start seeing patterns and numbers instead of people. You convinced me to see people again." "I did not convince you of anything," Jiwoo said. "I just treated you like a person." "Exactly," Taemin said. "And that changed everything." He knelt down in front of her chair, bringing himself to her level. "Jiwoo, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I am asking anyway. Can you forgive me? Not because I am the Imperator, but because I am your friend who made a mistake." Jiwoo looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw past the silver skin and the shifting eyes. She saw the loneliness, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that she would not reject him. "I do not know," she said honestly. "You hurt me, Taemin. You made me care about you and then you left. You kept this huge secret from me. That is not easy to forgive." "I understand," Taemin said, but, Jiwoo continued, "I can see you are truly sorry, and I believe you when you say you were afraid, so I will not forgive you yet. You have to earn that back. But I will give you a chance to try." Hope flooded Taemin's face. "Thank you. That is more than I deserve." "You are right, it is," Jiwoo said, but she smiled a little. "Now get up. You are the Imperator of half the galaxy. You should not be kneeling on the floor." "For you," Taemin said, standing, "I would kneel every day." "Please do not," Jiwoo said. "That would be weird." For the first time since the revelation, they both laughed. And in that moment, Jiwoo knew that maybe, just maybe, their friendship could survive this. Jiwoo had one condition for continuing their friendship. They had to meet at the cafe, at their usual table, just the two of them. No guards, no advisors, no cameras. Taemin's security team nearly had a collective breakdown at this request. The Imperator alone, unguarded in a public place. It was unthinkable. It was dangerous. It was against every protocol that had kept him alive for 300 years. But Taemin overruled them all. If Jiwoo wanted to meet at the cafe, they would meet at the cafe. The day of the meeting, the entire galaxy watched. News channels from thousands of worlds broadcast live footage of the small cafe in Seoul. The street was closed to traffic. Invisible shields protected the building. Snipers watched from nearby rooftops. But inside the cafe, it was just Jiwoo, Taemin, and Mrs. Bora. Jiwoo arrived first. She sat at their usual table and waited. Her hands shook a little, but she kept them steady by gripping her cup of coffee. When Taemin walked in, he was not wearing his imperial robes. He wore simple clothes, the kind he used to wear when he first visited. He looked nervous. "Hi," he said. "Sit down," Jiwoo replied. Mrs. Bora brought him tea without being asked. She set it down carefully and gave him a look that clearly said, "Do not hurt this girl again." Then she retreated to the counter, giving them privacy. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," Taemin said. "I told you I would give you a chance," Jiwoo said. "So here is your chance. Explain to me why I should trust you again." Taemin wrapped his hands around his teacup. "I cannot give you a simple answer because there is not one. The truth is, I am 300 years old. I have made decisions that saved billions and decisions that cost billions. I have lived so long that I forgot how to be vulnerable, how to risk being hurt." "Everyone risks being hurt when they have friends," Jiwoo said. "I know that now," Taemin said. "But when you have power like mine, vulnerability feels impossible. If I trust the wrong person, wars can start. Planets can burn. So I learned to trust no one, to keep everyone at a distance, to never let anyone see the person behind the title." "That sounds lonely," Jiwoo said, and her voice softened a little. "It was," Taemin admitted. "It was unbearably lonely. And then I walked into this cafe and you offered me a pastry. You did not care who I was or what I could do for you. You just saw someone who looked sad and you wanted to help." "Anyone would have done that," Jiwoo said. "No," Taemin said firmly. "They would not have. Most people see what they can get from someone. They see power or opportunity or danger. You just saw a person. Do you know how rare that is?" Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. "I understand why you wanted to keep being just Taemin, I do. But you should have told me the truth once we became real friends. You should have trusted me." "You are absolutely right," Taemin said. "I should have. I was afraid, but that is not an excuse. You trusted me with your art, your dreams, your worries about your brother, and I kept this enormous secret from you. That was not fair." "No, it was not," Jiwoo agreed. "I am sorry," Taemin said. "Truly sorry. Not as the Imperator, but as Taemin. As your friend who failed you." Jiwoo took a sip of her coffee. She had been angry for weeks. But looking at him now, seeing how much this meant to him, she felt her anger starting to fade. "Okay," she said finally. "I forgive you. But this is your only chance. If you lie to me again, we are done. I do not care if you rule the whole universe. Friends do not lie to friends." Relief washed over Taemin's face. "I promise. No more lies. No more secrets." "Good," Jiwoo said. Then she smiled. "Now explain this new accord to me. You are really going to share power with a council?" For the next hour they talked like they used to. Taemin explained his plans for reforming the empire. He wanted to create a system where individual worlds had more freedom, where leaders were chosen by their people instead of appointed by power, where every being had basic rights regardless of their species or status. "You are basing all of this on human ideas," Jiwoo realized. "Yes," Taemin said. "Your species is young in galactic terms. But you understand something that older species have forgotten. You believe that every individual matters, that power exists to serve people, not to control them. These are revolutionary ideas to most of the galaxy." "They should not be revolutionary," Jiwoo said. "They should be basic." "And that," Taemin said, "is exactly what makes humanity special. You think dignity and freedom should be basic rights, not privileges. The rest of the galaxy thinks in terms of power and hierarchy. You think in terms of people. Will the other empires accept this?" Jiwoo asked. "Some will. Some will not. There will be resistance. There might even be conflict." Taemin's expression became serious. "But it is the right thing to do. You taught me that doing what is right matters more than maintaining power." "I did not teach you that," Jiwoo protested. "You already knew it. You just forgot for a while." "Maybe," Taemin said. "But you reminded me. And sometimes reminders are what we need most." Over the following weeks, Taemin worked on implementing the new accord, while also visiting Jiwoo regularly at the cafe. The galaxy was in chaos. Some species celebrated the reforms. Others saw them as weakness. There were protests, debates, and political upheaval on thousands of worlds. But Taemin stayed firm. And slowly the idea started to take hold. If the mighty Dalvine Empire could embrace these principles, maybe others could too. Meanwhile, Jiwoo's art show opened. Her series on connection was displayed in Seoul's most prestigious gallery. The centerpiece was a painting of an alien figure sitting by a window and a human offering food. The title was The Emperor and the Rainstorm. Taemin attended the opening. He came in his simple clothes, not his imperial robes. He bought the centerpiece painting, paying a price that made Jiwoo's eyes water. "You do not have to do that," she said. "I want to," Taemin replied. "This painting captures the moment my life changed. It is priceless to me." A reporter asked Taemin why he had commissioned this human artist. He smiled and said, "Because she saw me when I was invisible. Because she reminded me that even emperors are people first. Because she changed how I see the universe." The story of their friendship spread across the galaxy. People were fascinated by the idea that a simple act of kindness had led to such massive changes. Songs were written about it. Stories were told. The cafe where they met became famous. Mrs. Bora had to hire more staff to handle all the visitors. Beings from dozens of species came to the cafe, hoping to experience the place where an empire had been transformed. Mrs. Bora established a new rule. All titles must be left at the door. In this cafe, everyone was equal. 6 months after the revelation, Jiwoo and Taemin sat at their usual table. Rain fell outside just like the first day they met. "Do you regret it?" Jiwoo asked. "Giving up absolute power?" "Not even for a moment," Taemin said. "I have spent 300 years carrying the weight of an empire alone. Now I share that weight with others. I can actually sleep at night. I can think clearly. I can be myself." "And you have time to drink tea with your friend," Jiwoo added. "That most of all," Taemin agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the rain. A young alien child at the next table stared at them with wide eyes. The child's parent whispered something, and the child's eyes grew even wider. "They know who you are," Jiwoo said quietly. "I know," Taemin said. "But look, that child is not afraid of me. They are curious, hopeful. That is what the new accord is creating. A galaxy where power does not equal fear." "You sound proud," Jiwoo observed. "I am," Taemin said. "For the first time in a very long time, I am proud of what I am building instead of what I am maintaining." "Good," Jiwoo said. She pulled out her sketchbook. "Now hold still. I want to draw you." "Again?" Taemin laughed. "You have drawn me 100 times, and I will draw you 100 more," Jiwoo said. "You are my friend. Friends draw each other." As Jiwoo sketched, Taemin watched the rain and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Peace. Not the peace of a ruler who has crushed all opposition, but the peace of someone who has finally found where they belong. The door to the cafe opened, and more customers came in, shaking off the rain. They ordered coffee and tea. They talked and laughed. They were just people living their lives, and sitting in the corner, an emperor and an artist were doing the same thing. Because in the end, that was all anyone was. Just people trying to live their lives, find connection, and maybe make the universe a little bit better. Years later, historians would debate what caused the great reforms of the Dalvine Empire. They would write long papers about political pressures and economic factors and strategic decisions. But those who were there knew the truth. The galaxy changed because a young woman saw someone who looked sad and offered them a pastry, because she treated a stranger with kindness, because she insisted that power did not excuse dishonesty, because she remembered and taught others to remember that every person matters. Every life has value. Every individual deserves dignity. These were human ideas. Simple ideas. Ideas that should have been obvious to everyone. But sometimes the most obvious truths are the ones we forget first. And sometimes it takes a simple act of kindness in a small cafe to remind the universe of what really matters. Humanity had given the galaxy many things over the years. Technology, art, music, philosophy,